Every time you deposit a paycheck into your bank account, you trust that the money will actually be there tomorrow. That baseline financial security, backed by federal insurance and strictly regulated investment markets, is not a natural law of economics. It is the direct legacy of Ferdinand Pecora, an underpaid assistant district attorney who dragged the most powerful men in finance into the public spotlight. Before the 1930s, Wall Street operated in near total darkness, treating customer deposits as personal gambling funds with almost zero federal oversight. How did a Sicilian immigrant with no political backing manage to publicly break the untouchable titans of American banking? His relentless investigation did not just expose corruption, but fundamentally rewired the architecture of modern global finance. The man who would eventually terrify Wall Street began his life far from the halls of power. Born in Nicosia, Sicily in 1882, Ferdinand Pecora immigrated to the United States as a young child. His family settled in the working-class neighborhoods of New York City, a stark contrast to the opulent Gilded Age mansions being built just miles away. Pecora's path to the law was not paved by elite connections or Ivy League endowments. He worked as a law clerk, absorbing the mechanics of the legal system while attending New York Law School. By 1911, he had passed the bar, building a modest private practice before finding his true calling in public service. In 1918, Pecora joined the New York County District Attorney's Office. He quickly earned a reputation as a meticulous and utterly incorruptible prosecutor. During the Roaring Twenties, while the city was consumed by illegal speakeasies and financial speculation, Pecora focused on shutting down bucket shops and stock swindlers. He systematically dismantled over 100 illicit brokerage firms that preyed on unsuspecting retail investors. These early cases served as a masterclass in forensic accounting, teaching Pecora exactly how financial predators manipulated the system. He learned to trace invisible money, a skill that would soon make him the most dangerous man in Washington. The catastrophic stock market crash of 1929 shattered the American economy and evaporated the savings of millions. Public anger simmered as banks collapsed in cascading waves, taking entire communities down with them. The United States Senate Committee on Banking and Currency launched an investigation into the causes of the crash, but it was initially entirely toothless. For 3 years, the committee floundered, producing little more than polite inquiries and predictable denials from bank executives. The inquiry was widely dismissed as a political whitewash designed to protect the financial establishment. By early 1933, the investigation was scheduled to quietly expire, heavily criticized as a massive waste of taxpayer money. Desperate for a final credible report, the committee's chief counsel resigned in frustration. In January 1933, during the lame duck session of the Hoover administration, the committee hired Ferdinand Pecora as its fourth chief counsel. They expected him to quickly wrap up the paperwork and let the investigation die a quiet death. They vastly underestimated the man they had just hired. Pecora demanded unfettered access to the internal ledgers, meeting minutes, and private correspondence of the nation's largest financial institutions. He spent weeks locked in a room with boxes of subpoenaed documents, meticulously piecing together a hidden architecture of systemic fraud. Pecora's first major target was Charles E. Mitchell, the powerful chairman of National City Bank. Mitchell was widely known as the pioneer of selling risky financial securities directly to ordinary retail depositors. Pecora subpoenaed Mitchell to testify in February 1933, dragging the banking titan into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Under relentless, methodical questioning, Pecora forced Mitchell to admit to shocking institutional practices. The internal bank ledgers revealed that National City Bank had taken bad loans and packaged them into new securities. These toxic assets were then aggressively sold to their own unsuspecting bank customers to clear the bank's balance sheet. The revelations did not stop at institutional fraud. Pecora presented personal tax records showing that Mitchell despite making over $1 million in 1929, had paid absolutely zero federal income tax. He achieved this by selling depreciated stock to his own wife to claim a massive, entirely artificial paper loss. The public backlash was immediate and ferocious. Within days of his testimony, Mitchell was forced to resign from National City Bank and was subsequently arrested for tax evasion. The myth of the infallible, benevolent Wall Street banker was completely shattered in the eyes of the American public. With momentum building, Pecora turned his sights on the ultimate prize, the House of Morgan. J.P. Morgan Jr., the undisputed king of American finance, was legally compelled to testify in May 1933. Morgan and his elite partners arrived in Washington, flanked by a small army of expensive corporate lawyers. Pecora bypassed the lawyers, zeroing in on the firm's private partnership agreements and internal correspondence. He methodically exposed the hidden mechanics of Morgan's immense political and economic influence. The most explosive discovery was a document known within the bank simply as the Preferred List. The Preferred List was an exclusive registry of influential politicians, former presidents, and prominent journalists. Whenever Morgan underwrote a highly anticipated new stock offering, the firm allocated shares to the people on this list at vastly discounted, below-market prices. These insiders could immediately sell their shares on the open market for a guaranteed, risk-free profit. It was a perfectly legal, highly sophisticated system of institutionalized bribery that ensured Wall Street always had friends in high places. The physical list itself, read aloud into the congressional record by Pecora, sent shockwaves through Washington. Furthermore, Pecora examined the personal tax returns of the Morgan partners. He demonstrated that J.P. Morgan Jr. and his top associates had legally avoided paying any income tax in the United States for the years 1931 and 1932. As millions of Americans lost their homes during the Great Depression, the wealthiest men in the country were contributing nothing to the public treasury. The hearings became a national obsession, broadcast over the radio and dominating front-page newspaper headlines for months. Pecora's calm, forensic dissection of high finance tapped into a deep reservoir of populist rage. He provided the exact names, dates, and dollar amounts that proved the entire financial system was fundamentally rigged against the working class. The sheer volume of damning evidence uncovered by Ferdinand Pecora made legislative inaction impossible. The newly elected administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt seized upon the public outrage generated by the hearings. They used Pecora's documented findings as a blueprint to completely overhaul the American financial system. The first monumental consequence was the Banking Act of 1933, commonly known as Glass-Steagall. The legislative text explicitly forbade commercial banks from using everyday retail deposits to engage in risky investment banking activities. By erecting this strict legal wall, the act ensured that a reckless Wall Street gamble could no longer bankrupt a local savings bank. Embedded within Glass-Steagall was the creation of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. The establishing charter guaranteed that the federal government would protect individual bank deposits up to a specified limit. If a bank failed, the working-class depositor would no longer be left penniless, fundamentally restoring trust in the financial system. Next came the Securities Act of 1933, designed to end the era of selling fraudulent stocks based on whispered rumors. The newly mandated registration statement required corporations to disclose verifiable, audited financial data before offering shares to the public. For the first time, investors had a standardized legal document providing actual facts instead of empty promotional promises. To enforce these sweeping new rules, Congress passed the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. The authorizing legislation established the Securities and Exchange Commission, a powerful new federal watchdog with the authority to police the markets. The law granted the SEC the power to subpoena records, punish insider trading, and compel corporate transparency on a national scale. Recognizing the architect of this new reality, President Roosevelt appointed Pecora as one of the founding commissioners of the SEC. He served alongside Joseph Kennedy, helping to establish the agency's initial regulatory framework. Eventually, Pecora left Washington to serve as a New York State Supreme Court justice, cementing his legacy in the judiciary. The Wall Street titans who had operated with absolute impunity were the clear losers of the Pecora era. They were forced to dismantle their sprawling financial conglomerates and submit to federal oversight. Meanwhile, the American public gained a fortified banking architecture that prevented another major systemic collapse for over 60 years. However, the strict regulatory walls built by Pecora did not last forever. After decades of intensive corporate lobbying, the core protections of Glass-Steagall were repealed in 1999. Less than a decade later, the integrated megabanks collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis, forcing massive taxpayer bailouts that echoed the crises of the 1930s. The enduring legacy of Ferdinand Pecora is the stark realization that financial stability requires relentless vigilance. His investigation proved that without severe legal boundaries, extreme concentration of wealth naturally breeds systemic corruption. Looking at the financial landscape since the 2008 crisis, do you believe we need to reinstate a strict separation between commercial and investment banking? Or do modern global markets require the massive, integrated financial institutions we have today? The rules governing your daily life were often forged in the fires of forgotten historical battles. To continue uncovering the hidden origins of the power structures and systems that shape our modern world, subscribe to the channel.